Okay, we are calling to order the May 12th Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. And first we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody please stand and face the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so now we are going to determine a quorum. So, Wayne Bergen?
Here.
Daisy Lucio?
Here.
Karen Wilson?
Here.
And Wayne Little, yours truly. So we have a quorum. All right, so the approval of the agenda. Do I have someone who will approve our agenda?
I'll
Do I have a motion? All right. Second?
I'll second it.
All right, so, all right, do we have approval of the minutes from the last meeting? Anyone make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so, is there any public comment from anything that we had addressed in previous meetings? From anyone, viewer? Okay. So there is no old business, so we will jump to the new business where we're gonna let the wonderful Tony Jackson tell us about everything that's quacked up to be on this new procedure. Have at it, Mr. Jackson. Janet, if you're an answer. No.
Yes. I briefly discussed it with the planning commission so they know what was going on, but this actually affects this board more than anything. We've had quite a few interest in people wanting to raise chickens. It's a big issue that's been going around. Normally we'd have to make an ordinance for it, but the problem with when you make an ordinance versus a variance, an ordinance sets it out like on paper, pretty much like this does, but it don't really give anybody there is no adjustment like one small lot, you know, in the same subdivision, there's another bigger lot, so they both get that same amount of chickens. There's just not a lot of control by the city other than enforcing that ordinance. The use of a variance is actually a better situation because this board can control where we send that to. The attorney's here if you got any questions for him, but we can look at the property, the site, the whole thing, just like you would a real regular variance, and enforce it that way. It gives us more ability, like I said, to control and enforce. I can't tell you exactly what to ask, but I can, on some of this you'll see, I recommend that we ask and trying to control. So if you look at, the first thing you'll see is the use of the variance request process. It just says, in order to have to obtain the variance application, complete the application, return it to the office, and then set up a meeting, and hearing with the person herself and talk to them, discuss to them everything, what to consider. And then they pay a $100 fee, and then we notify the adjoining neighbors. The thing in that hearing, or in the meeting with them, like I said, I can't tell them what you guys are going to say, but I can tell them some of the questions that I would ask, and and some that I think you guys should consider. I do lay out in here we would need to know, just like any other variance, we need to know the site plan, where their pen's going to be, how many chickens they're asking for, the size of pen they're asking for, something like that. In the application, you'll see the first page, page 1 has property owner, number of chickens, square foot of the pens. And then the other part, requirement checklist. That's a checklist that I'm recommending that this board use to kind of make the determination. One thing you'll see is that what last people that talked about and what Wayne was just talking about is the homeowners association letter. Everybody that I talked to, like in Winslow and all the other places, they're required to have an application from the HOA. This board can't enforce, nor can the planning department and code enforcement enforce deed restrictions or HOA requirements. But what we can consider them when we make a determination. So we put in here that the homeowner association would need to give them a letter of approval, because if they don't bring a letter of approval, then this board can use that as consideration for denying their variance request. Because, like I said, we have 4 subdivisions I know with HOAs, active HOAs. And then we got 1 that has an inactive and an active together. So it kind of gets strange. Let's see what
So I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So are these people wanting to raise chickens in the suburbs in their backyard?
Yes.
So what if I am a neighbor and I don't want to hear their rooster at 6 in the morning?
No roosters.
No, okay,
I
okay.
think that's pretty much across the board everywhere, no roosters.
They may
Okay.
identify as a rooster, but that's not really a rooster.
But to follow up on her question, so if a neighbor says, no, I mean, is that just something that's gonna be taken into consideration?
Yeah, this board could, we do that anyway. With all joining property owners, 600 feet will get a notice.
Yeah, it says on the first page, or second page, that they'll be notified and signage posted from your yard visible from the roadway. That'll be the first step. There'll be notification that they're gonna have a BZA meeting, here's what it's gonna be about, so the public will be allowed to listen and comment. And that's all gotta be taken into account. Because like at a previous meeting, they talked about, what if somebody puts up a chicken coop next to somebody's really nice pool or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you get to look at that and take that into consideration.
Okay.
Okay.
So, same thing in any other variance, we're considered variance, which means we can also make stipulations also.
Are we going to stipulate how many chickens they can have as a max?
They can do that, can't they?
What I suggest is to go ahead and deal with your variance aspect of it. To have the initial phase for them to come in and see if they meet that criteria. I think you can legislate after that within the variance, meaning that you can set parameters in an ordinance fashion. One, you have to be approved, and to be approved, all these things have to be done. Once you're approved, though, you've got to abide by this, and this. And therefore, you've got an enforcement mechanism that is going to be available for people that are violating it, whether they not have a rooster or whatever, that type of thing. So that's I think we get this phase of it done, where the variance is, and then we put a little ordinance together that has some legislative teeth to it, or at least requirements and restrictions.
Okay.
I would say, I would recommend that we set standards for how many chickens there can be from the very beginning, because then you'll start to get a flood of people who want to have 30, 40, 50 chickens, and like was brought up at the previous meeting, no one needs that many chickens.
We can
How many
still-
people are they trying to feed?
We can still make that determination in the variance, correct? You like anything else, and then come back and,
Well,
But we don't want to wing it.
you're gonna be doing it, well, again, in how you talked about this, different size plots and whatever, seems to me that those would lend themselves to a different, perhaps more chickens for someone and less for another because of the smaller area that is being involved. So it's kind of shoot from the hip for a while until you kind of get a feel for how it's going to play out. I don't know. You'll probably have complaints and you'll have to come back or get people that have some exception that we haven't thought about that we'll have to deal with. But, yeah, I think at some point there would need to
God,
be.
30 years.
Well, what if there's a max, and then if they can justify why they need more, then they would come?
Well, see, that leads you to the variance part again. So I
Correct.
think like it's being said, it needs to probably be a certain number. You don't get to come and seek a variance on the variance that you've already got for more chickens. Because you're dealing with domestic, well, I guess they're domesticated animals, yeah. So it's a little different animal. I mean, other municipalities do this.
Literally,
Yeah. It's not good.
yeah.
But I think what he's talking about for the variance part of it is a good starting point. I read through it, I thought it basically gives the city some control over how it's implemented, but then I think there probably needs to be some legislative control after that. Because let's say, Tony, that you've done it in the variance, you can have 30, they're over 30, or you have 10 and they're over that. What do you do at that point? Well, we're gonna shut you down, or we're gonna take your variance back, or we're gonna make you come into compliance. I mean, there's just, what's the mechanism by that, at that particular point?
I'd say that would take the variance away.
Well, you may, because once you grant the variance, can you take the variance back?
Yeah.
You can withdraw the variance once they've relied upon the
If
variance.
they fail to meet the variance stipulations.
Well, I'm kind of comparing it to a home that's built at that particular point, and they violate the variance at some point. So, anyway,
This would be a use variance,
it's a use variance, true.
so the standard variance would be the home, so.
So would it be something like, you know, up to, I don't know, we put out the number 30 earlier. No
Well, they're
more
saying
than
don't even
30,
talk
that's a
about-
lot,
They're
but you
saying
know
don't
what I'm
even talk
saying,
about
up
that,
to
because somebody might
20?
just have this little old chicken coop that can handle 6, and another one might have, be on an acre, that has
Yeah.
nothing behind them and wants to put 20.
Yeah,
Now, the flip side is, they can't resell them. So if they're asking for more chickens, I wanna know why,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know, I'm just, yeah.
like Perry says, I think we gotta start somewhere, and this might be the way to start, and like I said, something's always gonna pop up that we never thought of before. Like I said, I spent the last 25, 30 years saying no chickens and going and telling them, get rid of your chickens.
This could be the proudest moment of my presidency. What the flock. All right, so,
But yeah, that's what we're looking at. Like I said, I've got, in reality, I don't think you're gonna get as many as the people have been calling, because like I said, $100, you have to go through the variance, you have to jump through some hoops. Some people's like, they just don't wanna jump through the hoops, so.
Okay, what are you gonna do about, just like Ronnie said, he knows people already in town that's got chickens. Are you gonna make them follow this rule, or are they gonna have to?
Yeah, we do that now. We do that now. When somebody calls, we go out and tell them you can't have chickens.
All right, so when would this go into effect? Like ASAP? Like,
Yeah, they can file for a variance today. It would just be, just like any other variance, they have to go through the system.
anybody have any other questions, concerns, or? I know we're not scared, but we're chicken.
So if one gets out, if a chicken gets out,
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it goes home to roost.
somebody's dog got a hold of it.
That's our problem.
But it's not, yeah, it's not our problem, it's their job.
Somebody's cat gets out and the dog goes into the yard, the dog eats it, that's the cat owner's fault.
Okay.
Boy, it's gonna be a lot of quacking
It's
about
always been
this.
that way. I've been dealing with chickens for too long.
So we don't necessarily have to take any action, this is just
No.
discussion of what's going to happen anyway.
Yeah, just kind of, I laid it out.
It-
Because the variance process that we have now, the use variance, man, I think there's 29 pages. And it would be nothing of what we need here. It has no questions that we need here. So that's why I came up with that.
If I had any suggestion at all, not for this, but for future, we should always discuss these things as a board before we put a post on Facebook which elicits a whole bunch of responses.
It wasn't us.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, but then you kind of let the chicken out of the coop.
We were kind of shocked when we seen it. Anyway,
I was too. It's like, okay, cool, that's my.
So you're gonna really try to use this requirement checklist is what you're looking at?
right.
So they're gonna have all new fences,
Yeah,
And
but
6 foot.
6 foot high.
So, I'm sorry,
that's up to you guys. That's just what I'm telling them,
Well, I mean,
that
that's,
guidelines we're looking at, yeah.
so why were they never allowed to have them in the first place? What was the issue about having chickens in the city?
When we wrote that ordinance, could go, I don't know when it was, 1998. You remember, we had all kinds of people that had chickens and they had ducks, they had all kinds of stuff, and they would leave their feet out, there was a lot of rats. We had a lady that had a tiger out on 403. And we had the crazy guy that used to come in town, we had guys that would bring snakes in town and stuff.
Yeah,
So they wrote an ordinance that pretty much prohibited just about everything.
By the
They
way,
said, well, if they want a variance, they can come get a variance. But Ed Bowley was on the board,
the word affidavit is misspelled, by the way.
so. Did it?
Yeah.
It's
It's affidavit instead of. Just
That's free, I wrote
keep
it
it
free.
legal, you know. Affidavit? Yeah, okay. All right, so any more discussion from the board then? Is there any other business besides what we just discussed? Don't think so. Do I have a motion for adjournment? Bueller?
I'll motion to adjourn, unless
Do
you
you have a
guys have
second?
anything else.
I'll second.
All right, we are adjourned.